I see you, I'm just curious. Oh, okay, I just never heard of you before, so that's, okay. I'm taking notes for my brain. All right, here we go. All right, are you Mr. Mello?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mello, I'm Judge O'Brien. I'm going to read you your rights. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right and obligation to be present at your trial. If you fail to show up for your trial, they'll place failure to appear charges against you, and you could face an additional 1 to 5 years in jail. You have the right to a trial by jury. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one can be provided for you through the public defender's office. If the charges that are placed on you are discharged, dismissed, not prosecuted, or if you're found not guilty, you have the right to have your record expunged or wiped clean from these charges. Now, you're being charged with a criminal offense, and if you were found guilty, you are facing serious consequences, which may include the payment of a fine, the loss of your driver's license, and the possibility of a jail sentence. In addition, you may face increased penalties for later convictions, the loss of your right to possess firearms or ammunition, and your immigration status could be affected. You have important constitutional rights, including the right to representation by an attorney, but you may lose those rights or waive them if you do not act to protect those rights. You have the right to hire an attorney to represent you in every case. If you cannot afford an attorney, you may be eligible for a free attorney. If you want a determination made as to whether you are qualified for a free lawyer, then it is your obligation to be screened at the location identified in paragraph 5C of the bond checklist form that I'm going to give you today. If you do not hire an attorney or go to be screened, then you may be found to have waived your right to an attorney at your trial. You also have the right to represent yourself. However, you should be aware that self-representation can be dangerous. For example, there may be certain factual or legal defenses to your charge that you are not aware of, or legal issues related to the conduct of your trial or guilty plea that an attorney would know how to preserve for an appeal. If you exercise your right to proceed without a lawyer, then you are responsible for complying with all applicable rules of court, including rules of evidence, procedural rules, and proper behavior before the judge and jury. If convicted on the charges filed against you and ordered to pay a fine, you may request a reasonable scheduled payment plan to pay that fine. It is your obligation to keep up with your trial date and to obtain an attorney, either by hiring one or by being screened and found eligible for a court-appointed attorney prior to your trial date. If you do not appear at your trial with your attorney, you may be deemed to have waived your right to have an attorney represent you. And finally, you are required to keep the court notified of any changes of your address until the completion of your case. Do you understand so far, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Mello, you're being charged with solicitation to commit a felony and accessory before the fact of murder. These are both general sessions charges, which means you have an additional right. You have the right of a preliminary hearing. The preliminary hearing is an evidence hearing where the state has to show that they have the evidence to take you to court. If you want that hearing, take the form I'm going to give you and fill it out. You can mail it or take it to the address on the form, or you can fill it out tonight and give it back to me. But you only have a total of 10 days to get that form turned in. Otherwise, you lose your right to that hearing. Now, accessory before the fact to a felony is a violent crime in South Carolina. Based on the nature of these charges and the situation involved in these cases, this case, I am going to no bond you, and I'm going to send you to the circuit court for a bond hearing. Your next court date will be sometime in the next 30 days. I can't tell you if it could be 3 days from now or 30 days from now, because that'll have to be scheduled by the solicitor's office. But at that point in time, it'll be up to them to decide as to whether to grant you a bond or to keep you in jail until your court date. Do you have any questions?
I don't think so, thank you.
All right, sir, sit tight right there. I've got some papers for you to sign. And also, when you finish that, sir, just sit tight for a moment, okay? All right, now, Mr. Mello, one more thing. It's my understanding that Tina Purcell is in the courtroom. Tina, as I understand it, you're the sister of the victim, is that correct, ma'am? Would you like to say anything to the court in reference to this proceeding? Please, go ahead.
You did this to your family. Your child has to know that you did this to her family. I don't know where I would be really taught, but I assure you, if I am at all capable, I will be there every day. When you are convicted, I will be there at every parole hearing. Everyone. You will never get rid of me. And that is your own fault. You did this to yourself. So I have your honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell. I appreciate you coming. Mr. Mello, do you have any questions before we end this?
Nothing.
All right, sir, you're free to go with the officer.